Hi everyone. Week 12, College Football Selection Committee just released their rankings, and it's interesting. We have our rankings right now, machine learning algorithm that has been predicting in real time what the rankings would be this week. Let's go ahead and dive on into where the algorithm predicted the rankings would be and what was the actual releasing of the rankings looked like. Okay, so here we are on the my little spreadsheet that I put together right here. On the right is the rankings from the Rankings Right Now machine learning group. And here we have the College Football Selection Committee rankings. So everything is from the view of the College Football Selection Committee projected based on the rankings right now. What I mean by that is, let's say for Indiana, for example. Indiana, according to the College Football Selection Committee, was ranked 5th. Rankings right now had them at 7. That means that the selection committee had them 2 above where rankings right now did. So we have green for dead on, dark green for dead on, off by 1 is light green, yellow is off by 2 or 3, red is 4+, and blue means it completely missed it, right? So here we are with our rankings. The top 4, I think a lot of people could have predicted, right? Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, and Penn State. Nothing crazy there. The 2 that we have dropping out are Georgia and Miami. Those 2 dropping down a lot. Those are the 2 that I want to focus on the most right now. So Georgia loses to a ranked Ole Miss team on the road, may I say, right? That's another detail. Then you have Miami losing on the road to unranked Georgia Tech and continue to be unranked. Georgia Tech is not ranked at all in these rankings, right? But so both lose on the road. Georgia was 3, Miami was 4. The new releasing of the rankings show Miami at 9, Georgia at 12. So Miami losing to a unranked team on the road versus Georgia losing to a ranked team on the road. Georgia gets a worse punishment. I'm not sure why. Some people are going to say, well, it's because Georgia already has another loss. That's their second loss on the year, right? Their other loss was against Alabama, who's now ranked 10. Miami, this was their first loss. I understand that. They've played a couple of games close with fire. They almost lost to Cal. They almost lost to Virginia Tech. I was surprised to see that Miami dropped down 5, but Georgia dropped down 9. That was a big surprise. We had Georgia, we meaning the rankings right now algorithm, had Georgia at 11, Miami at 12. That made a little bit more sense to me. But here we are with Miami being off by 3 and Georgia almost correctly being dropped down all the way to 11. So that one was really big. Alabama, this section right here was the biggest question that I had. What would happen if Alabama was ranked the highest out of this group, right? I wasn't sure about that. I thought Alabama myself was going to be below Indiana and BYU, right? If Alabama was below Indiana and BYU, that would make things a little bit more sense in this area right here, right? So if Alabama gets moved right here, so let's just put Alabama, we'll leave Indiana and BYU in that order, and then Alabama right here. Right? Now, all of a sudden, these are only off by slightly 1. You still have a couple of 2s and 3s down here, but it makes it a little bit better, but not a lot. So BYU, let's go ahead and put everything back to where that we had it. So having Alabama at 10, Miami at 9, Notre Dame moves up to 8. This Indiana BYU thing is interesting. So our algorithm still had Indiana above BYU, which is good, but definitely trying to find this Alabama moving up too high. That will be something that needs to be fixed in the offseason, right? Nailed it in our newsletter. We talked about Boise State, SMU, and Texas A&M were all going to have to drop because Ole Miss was coming up into the rankings and everyone else has to move down. So this made sense to me. The algorithm nailed it. CU and Kansas State, to me, they're interchangeable. A lot of people will say, well, Kansas State beat Colorado. That was weeks ago. There's a lot of things that happen in this realm of the time that people will start to just forget about those games in the past and really looking at a game-to-game situation. One big one that I was very surprised with was Army. Army, the algorithm had Army all the way up to 18. They're also undefeated, right? To have them above, or to have them below Missouri, South Carolina, Clemson, Louisville, right? A lot of teams that have a lot more losses was surprising to me. So what that tells me is the selection committee is really taking strength of schedule into account right now. Army does not have a good strength of schedule. However, if you're going to take strength of schedule into account, then Georgia needs to be a lot higher because I think Georgia has the number one strength of schedule in the entire country. Maybe it's number 2. So you're picking and choosing where you're going to use a certain metric is an interesting idea to me. I don't necessarily agree with it, but regardless, the idea of this algorithm is to be as close as possible to the rankings. So regardless of what I believe it is, we are trying to design an algorithm that will be as close as possible in real time. We're already starting on a couple of different algorithms off on the side to try and reduce the amount of error that we're receiving in these predictions. This is the first year that we've done this, so it's been a ton of fun. We're learning a lot. But South Carolina being ranked when we had them down to 28, I really don't see that much of a difference between these two lanes who was ranked in the AP poll at 25. UNLV, South Carolina, 20 to 25, 20 to 30, I think they're all kind of the same. So I don't focus so much on down here. I focus mostly up here. So the big ones that we need to fix is this middle ground right here needs a little bit of a touch up. Alabama moving up a little bit too high, even though they had an extremely impressive win to LSU. LSU got absolutely blown out. We had LSU 2 spots lower than where the selection committee did. So everything else is in a good spot. Missouri, even after what they did this weekend, they're out. No, sorry. They're 2 spots below. Okay, that makes more sense. So a lot to really digest here. But the overall, the top 4 are dead on. We're really good at the bottom of the rankings. It's this middle ground right here that needs to make up the most. And if we can get that right, this thing is going to look sick. This would be off by 1 or less. If we get these middle ones all figured out, that would be 1 or less through the top 20, which is great, especially for college football fans to have a really great idea of what these rankings are going to look like in real time. Rankings right now, not rankings later, rankings right now. So thanks for going through it with us. We'll have actually one more thing I want to show before we go ahead and hop off. Let's go ahead and dive on in. You can see all my code that I've been working on. It's been a lot of fun, but let's go ahead and look at the rankings right now website. Here are the next predictions for the next rankings that are already going to be released. We're already at this point in time, right? So we have all of this broken down into where we are on week 13 now is what we're predicting. Georgia has the biggest jump up. Why? Because they're playing Tennessee. So here we are right there. CU dropping down a couple of spots. That's interesting to look at. South Carolina moving up even higher in the rankings. Clemson having a couple spots up. Iowa State breaking back into the top 25. There's a lot to digest. We'll have all of this in the newsletter later this week. We'll go ahead and play around with all of the different things that we want to look at, where the rankings might be, a couple of what-if simulations. What if Tennessee beats Georgia again? Where does Georgia fall, or beats them again, but has another big win against Georgia? Where does that put Georgia? Where does that put Tennessee? Indiana and Ohio State are getting ready to play each other. so much to go over. So thank you so much for walking through with us. I appreciate it. Stay tuned for more videos on rankings right now. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel, and we will keep you up to date with all of the predicted rankings for the selection committee as time goes on. Thanks for joining.